There was no what major arc to it. There was no agenda. I just David Guggenheim, the filmmaker, who is quite a record.
The noose looked fake until it didn't. On a quiet New Mexico backlot, Michael J. Fox stood on a concealed box, the camera framing a frontier gallows for Back to the Future Part 3. They ran the scene once, twice. On the third take, Fox tried to make it cleaner, more believable. His hand slipped, the rope bit. For a heartbeat, then two, then too many. The world narrowed to a strangled silence. His body hung slack. Crew members froze until Robert Zemeckis saw what no one wanted to believe and yelled to cut him down. In those suspended seconds, time itself felt treacherous. An old ally turned on him. What almost killed him that day wasn't only the rope, it was the grind you never saw. 18-hour days, studio to studio, sitcom to soundstage, laughter on cue, and adrenaline on loan. He was the bright engine of two eras at once. America's favorite overachiever on Family Ties by day, the kid who outran destiny in a DeLorean by night. The schedule was brutal. He made it look easy, and buried beneath that relentless momentum was a secret he guarded with props, posture, and perfectly timed pills. A diagnosis that could end a career before the credits rolled. This is the story of how a 5'4" kid from a military family became a cultural giant, and then something rarer. Not just a movie star, but a man who turned a private battle into a public crusade, who changed the way science hunts a disease, who taught millions that optimism isn't denial, it's discipline. We'll start at the moment the rope tightened, when the myth of invincibility snapped, and then pull back the frame to see everything that led there. The hunger, the break, the summers that bent time, the 7 silent years, the decision to tell the truth, and the revolution that followed. Because what happened to Michael J. Fox is gripping, but what happened because of him is bigger. Michael Andrew Fox arrived on June 9, 1961, in Edmonton, Alberta, the middle child of a family built on discipline and duty. His father, a career soldier with the Royal Canadian Corps of Signals, lived by precision. His mother, a payroll clerk with a quiet love for stage and story, carried a softer spark. Between them, Michael learned 2 languages early: structure and imagination. Army life meant movement. The Fox family packed and unpacked through postings in places like North Bay and Chilliwack, hopping from school to school until new kid felt like a permanent name tag. By the time he was a pre-teen, he'd lived in 5 different cities. That churn taught him to read rooms fast and win them faster. He found the quickest way through a lunchroom siege was a joke, a grin, a perfectly timed aside. Humor became both armor and key. When his father retired in 1971, the family finally stopped in Burnaby, British Columbia. Roots sank, dreams sharpened. Like countless Canadian boys, Michael pictured himself on frozen rinks under bright lights, skating toward the NHL. He had the speed and the grit, but growth never came. He topped out at 5'4", and against bigger bodies, the odds turned brutal. Letting go of hockey stung, but it opened a door where size didn't matter. He'd been teaching himself guitar, playing in garage bands, chasing the thrill of applause. Then high school drama class changed the map. In 1976, a teacher spotted his snap-fast timing and nudged him toward an audition at the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. The sitcom Leo and Me needed a small actor who could pass for 10. What ended one dream became the edge in the next. At 15, he booked the role of Jamie, the kid brother, his first paycheck, his first professional set, his first proof that this wasn't fantasy. Leo and Me ran 2 seasons, modest by industry standards, but massive for a teenager. It gave him rehearsal rooms, marks on the floor, and the first taste of a camera leaning in. More than anything, it gave him momentum. At 18, he chose chaos over comfort. Canada offered a steady series with real money, but Michael packed a duffel, $500, and a stubborn belief that he belonged on bigger stages. Los Angeles did not roll out a carpet. It handed him a key to a shoebox, West Hollywood, $200 a month, and a diet of bologna sandwiches and generic cereal. For a while, he lived on day-old bread, measuring hope in quarters. Auditions came, then stopped. By 1980, the phone went quiet. credit cards screamed louder. He fell behind on rent, stared down eviction notices, and did mental math that never added up. To survive, he sold his sectional couch in pieces, one $50 chunk at a time, until there was nothing left to sit on but resolve. A sliver of light appeared. Midnight Madness. 2 weeks' work, $2,000, 5 minutes on screen. He beat 200 hopefuls, showed up underfed, and once fainted after days of little more than rice. The film underperformed, the phone still didn't ring, and most of the check disappeared into $1,500 of debt. Rock bottom, he thought, only to discover there was a basement below rock. Even his name needed a reboot. When he joined the Screen Actors Guild, Michael Fox was already taken. He needed an initial. He refused his real middle letter, worried the tabloid headlines would make a joke of it, and reached instead for a crisp consonant inspired by another actor's middle initial. On December 1st, 1979, he signed the papers that made him Michael J. Fox. The credit first appeared on Midnight Madness. The kid who had almost nothing now had a name that sounded like somebody. Still, the grind worsened. By the summer of 1982, he was nearly $30,000 in debt, 2 months behind on the phone bill, and down to the last items he could pawn. He had auditioned more than 100 times and heard no more than yes, yet he stayed. Hunger hardened into discipline. Rejection toughened into range, and on the edge of giving up, he kept the line connected, just long enough for one call to change everything. The day the future called, he almost missed it. August 20th, 1982, mid-afternoon in a West Hollywood walk-up where the phone bill was 2 months past due and the last items left to sell were memories. Michael J. Fox was 21, $30,000 in debt, rehearsing the speech he'd give his parents about coming home. Then the phone rang. Agent Bob Schulenberg. You got it. The role was Alex P. Keaton on a new NBC sitcom called Family Ties. He had auditioned in May, jittery and underfed. Then again in June, sharper, leaning into the character's caffeinated ambition. He'd beaten hundreds, including Matthew Broderick, by turning a conservative teenage striver into a live-wire contrarian with a briefcase and a grin. The contract was $5,000 per episode. Oxygen money. Season 1 meant $100,000 and a lifeline. Family Ties premiered on September 22, 1982. The pitch had been about ex-hippie parents and their kids, but after 4 episodes, audiences locked on to Alex, the pint-sized supply-side philosopher who worshipped Milton Friedman and worshipped his mother's approval even more. Ratings climbed. By 1983, the show was drawing 30 million viewers a week, and Fox, who had nearly left town, was suddenly America's emblem of 80s hustle. Not everyone believed at first. NBC's Brandon Tartikoff reportedly argued Fox was too short, not a lunchbox face. Fox later sent him a custom lunchbox inscribed, "For your crow." The joke landed because the work did. He was precise without being precious, elastic without losing truth. He made arrogance charming and sincerity dangerous, a mix that turned scenes into spark plugs. Awards followed like mile markers, 3 consecutive Emmys, 1986 through 1988, and a Golden Globe in 1989. More crucial was what the job unlocked. The stability of a hit series meant leverage and time slots that could be bent, if barely, to make room for a movie down the road that would tilt his life again. The kid who'd been 1 eviction away from surrender now had proof. 1 phone call can redraw a map, 1 character can reroute a culture, and 1 break, properly seized, can buy you the next impossible shot. The switch happened fast and without anesthesia. In early January 1985, director Robert Zemeckis made the call he'd been dreading. Eric Stoltz, talented, committed, but tonally misaligned, was out as Marty McFly. The movie needed buoyancy, a pinball of nervous charm who could ricochet between panic and wonder. It needed Michael J. Fox. There was one problem. He already belonged to Family Ties. What followed was an engineering project on a human being. Days belonged to the sitcom, table reads, rehearsals, blocking, taping. Evenings and nights belonged to Hill Valley. Fox left Paramount at dusk, slid into a station wagon, and was ferried to Universal, where he climbed out as a different person. He would shoot until 2 or 3 in the morning, nap in a shallow pocket of darkness, and then do it again. On Fridays, the punishment doubled. 2 live episodes back-to-back for the audience, then a sprint to set that often finished at sunrise. Crew members sometimes carried him to bed. He began to blur prop lists between worlds, once hunting a camcorder on the Family Ties set that, of course, belonged to the film. Exhaustion, though, gave the performance a useful edge. Marty's perpetual forward tilt, the feeling of one bad step from disaster, was not an act. It was the truth of a 20-something fighting clock and chemistry. When Back to the Future finally hit theaters that summer, the kinetic gamble paid off. A modestly budgeted time travel comedy became a phenomenon. The DeLorean, 1.21 gigawatts, Great Scott, all of it stamped itself onto pop vocabulary. The kid who had nearly left Los Angeles was suddenly fused to a myth Americans told about themselves. Scrappy, fast-talking, improbably brave. Success multiplied. Within weeks, Teen Wolf arrived and turned a single summer into a coronation. Then came The Secret of My Success, Doc Hollywood, bright lights, big city, and casualties of war. Proof that Fox could pivot from fizzy comedy to bruising drama without losing his center. But the job could bite back. During Part 3, the gallows sequence that looked fake didn't. Fox insisted on a cleaner take, misjudged the slack, and blacked out as the rope closed. Robert Zemeckis saw it first, shouted to cut him down, and yanked him back from the edge. That was the paradox of the era. The role that made him timeless demanded that he race time itself, and for a while, he kept winning. The first alarm was a flicker in the left pinky, so small it could have been nerves or too much coffee on Doc Hollywood. It was 1991. Michael was 29. A neurologist gave the movement a name that did not fit the body everyone knew. Early onset Parkinson's disease. The room shrank. Futures he had not yet lived rearranged themselves. He left with a prognosis and a decision. Keep working, keep quiet, keep moving. Silence became a strategy. He learned the choreography of disguise, dose dopamine at precise intervals, swallow pills like Halloween candy between setups, hitch a coffee cup to a trembling hand so the shake had something to do, anchor a hip against a desk to steady a scene, fold an elbow behind a briefcase so the stiffness read as business. Directors saw control. The truth was Control's imitation. Between takes, the mask slipped. He would breathe, reset, and pull it back on before the slate clapped. The cost came after the rap. Fear had a voice, and for a while he answered it with alcohol. He called those months his slide. Nights stretched long in bathtubs with the water roaring loud enough to drown thought. Mornings brittle with shame and stiffness. Tracy Pollan did not flinch. She asked sharper questions, loved harder, and stood close enough that he could not lie to himself without lying to her. With her, he chose sobriety. The first days were knives, then needles, then breath. He stayed sober. He has stayed sober since. Work did not stop. It adapted. Films gave way to television's rhythm, rooms he could control, commutes that did not require time zones. He became a student of his own body, anticipating tremor like weather and shooting around it. He added tools, speech work for the softness that sometimes stole his consonants, physical therapy for the rigidity that crept like frost. He learned the boundary between pushing and punishing, though he crossed it often. For 7 silent years, he carried the diagnosis as a private weight, while the public saw only the bright engine, the quips, the posture, the pace. If the camera steals the truth, he stole it back long enough to finish another scene. The secret did not make him smaller, it made him precise. And behind the precision, something else was forming, a refusal to surrender that would soon turn an inward battle into a very public kind of war. The rope didn't end him, neither did the diagnosis. Time kept moving, and Michael J. Fox kept choosing what to do with it. He began as a kid who learned to read rooms, then became an actor who could bend a scene to his will, then a star who sprinted between 2 worlds until the pavement smoked. When Parkinson's arrived, he did not retreat into the shadows of what he'd already done. He stepped forward and made the next act bigger than himself. funding labs, accelerating trials, and turning a private tremor into a public engine for change. The foundation he built didn't just raise money, it rewired how research gets done, how quickly answers arrive, and how loudly hope can speak without lying. The myth of invincibility snapped on that gallows. Something sturdier replaced it. Not the illusion of always winning, but the habit of showing up, laughing anyway, and doing the work that matters when the cameras aren't rolling. That's why the honors land differently on him. Not as lifetime achievement punctuation, but as mile markers on a road he's still walking, list in hand, jokes in pocket, purpose out front. Ask what happened to Michael J. Fox, and you'll hear about a near-fatal take, a brutal schedule, a brutal diagnosis. Ask what happened because of him, and you get something else entirely. Millions of lives touched, a field accelerated, a culture reminded that optimism isn't pretending the fall won't hurt, it's getting up again and taking someone with you. The man who once played with time gave some of it back, and he's not done.